sorry. Where were we? Oh, I remember.
I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Spent about 2 racks on handmade do rags. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. That's everybody from sports to college class to rap and back.
Today, let's talk philosophy, okay? And I know it makes no sense probably just off the bat jumping right into this, right? Let me just say, this is for a class assignment. And I decided, why not make a YouTube video, okay? So for quick context, super duper quick, I am taking a class in the School of Social Work that is about this idea of how can we make this field, really make our world, our experiences more Afrocentric. And part of that includes this assignment where I am encouraged to kind of demonstrate my philosophy or my beliefs and values of working with Black clients who look like me, but also too, let's be clear, clients who look like me, but we are not a monolith, right? Okay, all right. Just wanted to set that record straight. But so essentially in this class, and also too as a new leader in African-centered social work within the School of Social Work here at the University of Michigan, I have been encouraged to think about ways in which my practice has been informed by racism and these Eurocentric ideas that I have seen growing up, and ultimately, if we're going to be honest, that in many ways I have partaken in, right? And so asking questions like, why can't I? Maybe I won't wear my Crocs, but why can't I wear my sneakers to a meeting with a client? And I mean, why can't I wear my Crocs? You know? Asking questions like, why can't I do a YouTube video for a homework assignment for my master's degree that I'm earning, that I'm paying for? Why would you want to do a YouTube video? Because I can, right? And so kind of breaking down some of those ideologies that we've had about what school looks like, what practice looks like, what the work environment is supposed to look like, what all of these things are supposed to look like, breaking those down and encouraging folks to think about them in a more Afrocentric way. And in doing that, something that we've been discussing largely that really I hadn't known much about before taking this course are the 7 Kwanzaa principles. Yay! And I'm going to display them here because I have a lot of room over here. But essentially, so coming into this course, I've had some experience working within a predominantly Black community. My internship in undergrad, I was primarily working with Black women who had survived experiences of sexual assault and domestic violence at a culturally specific facility, right? And so all day long, I was surrounded by people who looked like me, both as a Black person and as a woman. However, coming into this program has introduced me to a much broader perspective of what even still that practice can look like. And so essentially, yeah, that's kind of like the little context, a little breakdown, however, whatever. So today I'm going to be demonstrating my kind of philosophy, and I haven't come up with like a chant yet, but if I do, maybe I'll display it somewhere, because I want to come up with something that I can kind of take with me to kind of guide me throughout the rest of this experience and into the future as a social worker, wanting to do culturally specific work. If you didn't know that about me, I want to do culturally specific work with survivors after I graduate in December. But so to demonstrate my philosophy, I decided to kind of break down this video that I stumbled upon. And by stumbled upon, I mean, I did a little bit of research. I found this other YouTube channel, and there's this Black woman who makes like these kind of like comedy videos. And really it's comedy or it's funny because there's some element of truth in it, right? And so it's like dark humor almost, and it sparked an idea in me. And what I'm gonna do is, so this video is called ABC Black Comedy, Therapist First Aboriginal Client. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Okay, it's only 2 minutes. And it's supposed to be funny, right? It's intentionally sarcastic. However, again, as I just said, there's some element of truth, and actually a disturbing amount of truth is within this 2-minute video. And so what I've decided to do is take this video, break it down into some sections where I was like, whoa, which really the whole video was like, excuse me? But I decided to take some elements from that video, and I'm just gonna pause. I'm gonna think about ways that it can be reframed, or ways that I myself might want to look at the situation. So this video will kind of like stop, start, stop, etc. all throughout. But essentially, that's what I'm gonna do, and that's kind of how I'm going to demonstrate my philosophy of working with Black clients. And there's all different types of philosophies, right? And so things like treat others the way that you want to be treated. Or in social work, things like let the client lead. Everyone's a master of their own experience. These are all kind of philosophies, things that you believe, things that you value, that kind of guide us in our everyday personal lives. And not everyone's philosophy is going to be for everyone. I could name a few, but I will refrain from doing so. And essentially, it's also going to be important for me to kind of grasp a little bit of those Kwanzaa principles that I displayed earlier of unity and self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, faith, right? Of course, they're all going to show up in different ways, or maybe some of them will show up much less than others. But maybe you'll hear me kind of touch on those a little bit throughout this video as well. And this video is really specifically for my classmates and my professor, because again, it is an assignment. However, hopefully, folks from my channel who just kind of come here and watch this video, hopefully it's something that you can take from it. And I don't know, maybe other social workers might stumble upon it, or I should say other social work students might stumble upon it. And yeah, think about ways in which you yourself might want to reframe some of what you have seen in this kind of demonstration of this white client working with her first Aboriginal client. What might you do differently? What might you want to see if you were the client in this situation? How might you feel? Feel free to leave any of that in the comments or to directly message me. But anyway, I've been talking too much, so without further ado, let's get into what we came here to do.
Tanya, what brings you here?
I've started this new job, and for the first time in my life, I'm the only black fella in the workplace. It's just started doing my head in.
Okay, look, oh, I have to admit something here, Tanya. Full disclosure, I've never actually had an Aboriginal client before, which I don't think will be a problem. We're all the one race.
Off the bat, problematic, right? And again, another disclaimer, this is intentionally sarcastic. However, it's unsettling thinking about that. I'm almost positive, 100%, even without ever having to be a fly on the wall or sitting in the seat at the given moment, that this has happened to a Black client. I'm almost certain. For one, her full disclosure was inappropriate. You're my first Aboriginal client. And to that, I would just say that it's really important for us as social workers of any and all backgrounds to try to be as informed as possible and to practice cultural humility, right? And I say that intentionally. I think cultural competence is something that we've heard several times, and it's kind of like, for me, it's like the equality versus equity thing. Equality, scratch it. Okay, in my opinion, I'm all for equity, right? And so for me, cultural competence, you scratch it. Cultural humility, and because to me that means that you have this willingness to learn about other cultures and other people's experiences, and by doing so, you would already have went into that session as the therapist in that seat where there's this perception of power and all of these things, and especially as a white woman. But I digress. But you would have already went into that room, into that meeting with some background knowledge, for one, of the experiences of your Black client. But furthermore, you would have known that saying something like, oh, you're my first Aboriginal client, is only perpetuating the things that she's already coming and feeling, right? And that's these racial microaggressions and all these things that are gonna kind of be unpacked here in the next few minutes. But for one, step one, cultural humility. Do some reading, do some research, do something but that, okay? Step two, I don't know if y'all caught it, but we're all of one race. No, we're not. Who said that? And why they said that? And tell them to take it back. We're not all of one race, okay? Humans, sure, even though sometimes that's debatable, but we're not all of one race. And I said this before, that even though I'm approaching this kind of from a lens that incorporates my own experiences as a Black woman in America, I also too have to go into this understanding that we are not a monolith. And so while this Black woman's experiences may have some truth to me, or I may share some similarities, it's not my place to be like, yeah, girl, and this happened to me, etc., or to just act like I just know what she's going through, right? Even if internally I'm pissed, because there's some truth to it, right? And so we're not all of one race. We're not. And especially you as a white woman to say that to me as a Black woman. And that is, again, perpetuating all of the things that are wrong with this meeting in the first place. And it's colorblind racist, which we know is problematic in and of itself. It's not helpful. Essentially, you just told me that you don't see me for me. And you just laid it down already that throughout this entire meeting, you're not gonna see me for who I actually am and for the experiences that I have because of who I am. So I think in trying to take a more Afrocentric approach to this, or kind of thinking about what it means in this instance to work with Black clients, I'm thinking about self-determination and letting the client speak for herself and share her experience in the way that she sees fit, right? Just going into that in that way was not helpful. Into letting her define herself for who she is. As she said, I'm the first Black woman in this position, or I'm the only Black woman in this environment. For the first time, this is an experience that I'm having, and this is why I am here. And then for you to follow up and say you're my first Aboriginal client, okay. Well, let's go into the rest of this.
No, I'm sure we can make this work. So, what exactly is it that's doing your head in?
I'm sure we can make this work. About maybe opening the door for just in case it doesn't work, right? And I think there's several different ways that one can incorporate this, and maybe this isn't even the right place to do that, especially considering how things started. But something that my professor, who this video is actually for, has exposed us to is this idea that you're not always going to be the perfect fit or the one therapist for your client, right? And that is 100% for your client to figure out for themselves, for your client to decide for themselves, right? And so you work together, you figure that out, and if you're just not the one, you're just not the one. I'm sure we can make it work. How about we don't force it, okay? Especially if I'm your first Aboriginal client and you start it like that, I doubt it will work. So how about we try opening the door for the fact that it's okay if it doesn't, and maybe it won't, but we together can work to figure that out, okay? Refer, connect, do whatever it is that we've got to do. And to me, that would be making this instance more Afrocentric. And also, something else I was just thinking about, how about congratulate her on her new position? It's a big step, it sounds like. Just saying, hey, congratulations on your new social media job. Congratulations. How does it feel?
At work the other day, and one of my colleagues walked past my desk and was like, "Oh, you're the new social media manager?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am. I started last week." And then she goes, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Melbourne." And then she goes, No. Where are you from?" So I go, "Right, I'm from Reza." And then she goes, "Where are your people from?" So I go, "People are from Gippsland." Like, how rude, right?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Huh?
Why is it rude?
How's it rude? You know how it's rude. You know, deep down, you know how it's rude. And it's not on your client. Or how about, let's just not leave it to the client to point it out, to point out the obvious, right? How about we name it for what it is, which is a racial microaggression. And if you think back to the video that I did last semester and how I was talking about how even though there's this micro piece of it, it's not micro at all, right? So validating the client's experiences so it sounds like you've been experiencing racial microaggressions at work, especially because as the victim, sometimes, and this would come from my previous point of doing the research, doing the work, continuing to do the work. But as a victim of microaggressions, there's so many times that it happens where you're questioning yourself of, did that really just happen to me? No, that's not what they meant. That can't be what he meant to say. He didn't mean it like that. Oh, I'm just overreacting. So naming it, kind of giving that client that sense of relief of, I'm not crazy. This is something that's happening to me in the workplace.
You think she would have asked me 10 times where I'm from if my skin wasn't this color?
Maybe she was just curious. Sometimes people are just curious. Are you sure it was 10 times, or did it just feel like 10 times? Because I don't think there's much of a crime in being interested in someone.
Okay, so
Gaslighting is not helpful. And if we think about the Kwanzaa principle, again, of collective work and responsibility, meaning your problems are my problems, vice versa, we gonna work together, figure out what to do about it. So gaslighting, the are you sure, all of these things, and how about you just believe me because I said it? And going back to the philosophies, I'm a master of my own experience. I said what I said. How about you just believe me? How about that? So again, instead of invalidating, let's push and move towards validating, because as Black people within this society, that's not something historically that we have had, right? Of people validating our experiences, listening to our stories. So maybe you could even just try doing that. Just try shutting up and listening. Don't ask me, am I sure? How about that? How about that? If you just let me lead, let me talk, let me tell my story, because this Eurocentric kind of ideology of what therapy may look like is that I, as your therapist, am supposed to ask you a gazillion questions. I'm supposed to get to know you by doing that. So I have to ask you these things, right? But how about you just let me talk? And validating, how about you say something like, I am so sorry that that happened to you. Like, that must have been frustrating. And because ultimately, I do understand that we as social workers have to do our jobs, right? And that does entail asking questions, and that's okay. But you have to ask the right questions, right? And asking your client, are they sure? Especially in a situation like this. Asking your Black client, who is clearly experiencing racial microaggressions, if they are sure that the racial microaggression was experienced by them who lived through it and was so off-put they came to therapy to talk about it if they're sure. I don't see that myself. I don't see it. So how about something like, I'm sorry that happened to you. That must have been frustrating. Would you mind telling me a little bit more about how you felt in that moment? Boom. It's better than are you sure? I'll tell you that much. I don't know if it's the right question to ask, but it's better than are you sure? Maybe try making it so that she doesn't feel so alone in this experience. Because, again, this happens to so many Black people in the workplace. And so feeling frustrated, it's not an uncommon feeling. However, it's a feeling that we're told we cannot express. So how about you make her feel comfortable in that space to express that feeling? Maybe trying creativity, finding creative ways to get your client to express and to open up in whatever that might look like for them. Okay, let's continue.
Anyways, we're having lunch in the staff kitchen and I'm microwaving my lunch. And the dude I sit next to walks in and he's like, "Oh, what bush tuck are you heating up? Is it a kangaroo? Did you kill it with a boomerang?"
Did you?
I'm vegan.
Oh. No, I can understand why that was offensive.
Feel like you're not really getting it. They wouldn't be doing it if I was white. Do you get that?
Whoa, Tanya, I need to ask you to calm down, Missy. You're getting a little bit aggressive there, okay? We're on the same side. I just need you to help me understand why you're feeling what you do.
Well.
And what we're not gonna do is angry Black woman, the client, okay? That's not what we're gonna do. Again, try validating. It sounds like they're pissing you off. Maybe not like that, but maybe being upset is a completely valid response to someone being an asshole. I mean, y'all get what I'm trying to say. Try validating instead of literally throughout this entire session, all I've seen is invalidating, making it a personal problem, making the client feel as if she's crazy. And now you're making it seem like she's just angry and she needs to get over it. And did y'all hear when she was like, "I'm vegan"? And then she was like, "Oh, now I can see how that's a problem." So you're telling me all of this that I've said beforehand was no issue, but this is a problem? Okay. And furthermore, that whole point of you need to help me understand you, of course there's an element of truth to that, right? Because again, the client is the master of their experience and we only know what they tell us, right? And that's why it's important to build rapport and why it's important to build relationships, community, right? With your clients. Because if you don't do that, why would they open up to you? So in thinking about making this more Afrocentric, the point isn't merely for her to help you understand her experiences or her issues of what's going on. Because again, going back to that cultural competence little rant that I went on, you're not gonna understand anything ever fully, right? Because we walk different paths, we have different experiences, even if there's some elements of similarity within them. So that's not the point of this. The point is for we, us, together, you, me, to work together to create or to draw out, whatever you want to call it, the elements of your experiences and how that's impacting you. And why that's brought you in. What's going on for us to work together collectively, okay? Again, collectively. That's this piece here. I can't just put it all on the client. Okay, I can't just sit in my little chair put my glasses on as she did with my scarf around my neck, clamp my hands and cross my legs and expect you to just spill it all out for me. One, because it's not how relationships work. That's not how you get someone to open up. But furthermore, taking it one step above. It's not Afrocentric, okay? You're not centering my Black experience. You clamping and crossing the legs and being all, how can I take you serious? It may have even been helpful for this therapist to call out her whiteness. Name it to tame it.
The thing that really set me off was just yesterday. We were having a staff meeting and one of my colleagues walked in, turned to me and said, "What's up, my nigger?"
And? Did you tell them what's up?
And in the end, I mean, I was speechless, child. Like when I first watched it, I was like, and I have to catch myself because, again, this is me battling with some of the ways in which I partake in a Eurocentric worldview, but also too pushing for a more Afrocentric worldview for everything that I do. And so I was speechless and I was like, what if my jaw just dropped in the therapy session with this client? I was like, he did what? You know, I'm human, so maybe it would happen. Two, which it ends here, so we don't know what happens, but in my head I'm imagining because she is the only Black woman in this workplace that she just felt powerless and didn't know what to say and maybe said nothing at all. And if that's something that she shares, validating that that is normal, that is okay, because we gotta survive out here, people. Validating that is super important. Well, did you tell them what's up? So hopefully from this video and kind of this dissection of what was done versus some of the things that maybe I would do, which was a lot of validating really and just letting the client lead, you know, some of that self-determination from those Kwanzaa principles that I talked about, but also too trying to highlight some of the elements where collective work and responsibility, you know, your problems are my problems, or let's work together and figure out a solution, or if there is no solution, let's just work together and debrief. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. How do we feel, right? Opening the door for some of those things to happen is what I think would have been the most helpful in this therapy session, for that client to walk away feeling heard at the very least, right? Because we're not saying that in one therapy session, first of all, but we're not saying that therapy in general is going to solve all of your problems, because racism still exists, right? Racial microaggressions still exist. And that's part of the work too, of the point of this class and of advocating and thinking about how, and for, I should say, we can be more Afrocentric or Afrocentric period. That's a part of why it's so important, right? And so thinking about ways in which this client could have felt heard in this session, because this therapist may have very well, if this were real life, right? Because again, I remind you, this was a skit, but if this were real life, this client may have very well walked away with this ideology of therapy as bullshit, as something not for me, right? And that's something too, a notion essentially that many Black folks have grown up with of therapy is not for us. You get up, you keep moving. And that's how it's been, right? And so all that therapist did, if that's the notion that this Black client too grew up with, was perpetuate that, right? And that's not helpful. okay? That's what we've been talking about this entire time. None of that was helpful. And so thinking about the ways in which you as a therapist make an impact on your client, because again, another thing we've been talking about is this idea of intent versus impact, in that the impact is what matters here. Your intent doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because regardless of whether you meant to invalidate my experience with racial microaggressions, or whether you didn't mean it like that when you asked me where I'm from, it doesn't matter, because it still made me feel like shit anyway. Right? And so how can we, as the therapist in this situation, not perpetuate those things and impact in a different way, impact in a stimulating way, impact in a helpful way? And I think that in this case, in this instance, it starts with naming it, right? Name it to tame it. I recognize that, well, for me, it wouldn't be that I'm a white person, but for this therapist, you know, I recognize that I'm white, etc., whatever that whole speech might look like. But for me, I have to think about the ways in which I, as a Black woman, too have privileges, right? One of the privileges that I have right now is that I'm attending the #1 school of social work. I'm studying at the University of Michigan. There's a prestige that comes with that I didn't ask for, right? Just like, you know, the therapist didn't ask to be white, but I am here. I have that privilege, as does she. Name it to tame it. And in doing so, you start to break down some of those power structures. Whether it's perceived or real, it doesn't matter, because again, impact. Name it to tame it, okay? Also to validating the experiences as opposed to invalidating or questioning in the wrong way. Are you sure? Not helpful. And then similarly to, I kind of started to lead into it anyway, by asking the right questions. Asking questions is a skill that I'm learning, because even still in doing this kind of demonstration, if you will, I don't even know if this is a demonstration, okay, if I'm gonna be honest. But even still in watching this, I'm like, there's so many points of this where I'm like, I don't know what I would do. And that comes from, again, knowing that this is a continuing learning experience, right? And also too, asking questions is a skill. And you have to ask the right questions in the right way. Therefore, showcasing some creativity, which is one of those Kwanzaa principles. And, you know, I might say to actually, by choosing to do a YouTube video, I'm kind of engaging in this a little bit. But showcasing some creativity in your therapy sessions is going to be super important, right? Having some faith, okay? Believing your clients, believing in change. I think all of these different elements are going to be important to working with Black clients. And I think we have a lot of work to do. But I think it has to start somewhere, right? And so even just by taking this course and thinking about these ideas, you know, we're all starting somewhere. And I think about how this can kind of relate to some of the other courses that I'm talking about. And in a different assignment that we had for this class, I talked about the allostatic load, which is this theory of stress that essentially when we are exposed to so much stress in our lives, it can lead to changes, deterioration in our minds and our bodies, our health, right? And when we think about the experiences of Black people over time, throughout history, and still today, with that history living in our bodies, And we come into a therapy session like this, right? Where we have things like stereotypes and racial microaggressions and prejudice and just flat out racism. All of these things, all you're doing is adding to that load, right? And so thinking about, in what ways can I, as a therapist, in this moment, at least for this client who I know, if this is the only thing that you know as the therapist working with Black clients, is that Black folks go through a lot of shit, and that quite literally shortens our lives and taints our experiences in the world. If you at the very least know that, and you go into that therapy session with that knowledge, I feel like a session like that would have never happened. Because I truly believe that a Black client has to feel safe. Has to feel safe. We are asking people to share with us some of the most vulnerable points of their lives, whatever that looks like for them, right? Some of the most damaging experiences of their life, some of the most hurtful. And if they don't feel safe in doing that, why would they? And if you think about the dynamics of what safety has looked like for African Americans in our society, why would I ever do that? Maybe that's my philosophy. Safety first. That sounds so cliche after I said it, but I mean that wholeheartedly. Safety first. You know, we have this person first initiative, and I think with that is safety first. When we are working with Black clients, safety first. Safety first. And actually, I think there's this thing, I just had like a moment. There's I can't remember what they're called, but like in the beginning of our social work program, in that orientation, I think there was actually a point that emphasized safety over comfort. Safety over comfort. And I think that's huge when we're talking about working with Black clients. And I'm rambling now and I'm ranting, but hopefully you've been able to make some connections between the video, my take on it, my kind of reflection piece, and all of these things. Hopefully you've been able to put them together in a way that gave you an aha moment or gave you something to walk away with after this. But yeah, so thank you for watching, and yeah, until next time, peace, love, and hair grease. And remember, safety first.
Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Spent about 2 racks on handmade new rags. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. That's everybody from sports to college class to rap and back.